What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome into another edition of the NFL Weekly, the Wildcard Weekend edition of the NFL Weekly here on the network. We get ready to look ahead to the 6 games that we have on deck for this weekend. With me, as always, we'll start with Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
Doing well. Looking forward to the playoffs to get started. You don't have to have a horse in the race to enjoy the competition.
Yeah, I do like the extra game now. Obviously, that extra Monday night, I guess, as someone who works the old 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, it's something nice to look forward to on a Monday night. We're gonna have a good one on Monday, so it's definitely a good time of year. But we also have, as always, Coach Brandon Lupian. You can find Coach at Portland 76er. How you doing tonight, sir?
Doing quite well. Just blessed to be on with you guys again, and looking forward to week 1 of NFL playoffs.
Yeah, it's the super wild card weekend, as they have now dubbed it now. 2 games Saturday, 3 games Sunday, and as of course I mentioned, 1 game Monday. Before we do dive in, want to give an update. Obviously, very good update. The Damar Hamlin recovery is continuing on track, and just 10 days after his fateful collapse in Cincinnati, he has returned home to his own house with family and friends there. So great story for Damar Hamlin and everyone. And I think, for us to know that everything is on the right track there, and now we can kind of go back to the meaningless stuff. We talked about it last week, how the point spreads don't really matter. But now we have, this kind of option to kind of go back to the things that, don't matter, the luxury that we have. But with that, before we dive into the games, have a moment to kind of look back on the season from a few different ways. Obviously, the way our teams performed, how, the season went overall, and some of the maybe interesting coaching hires, coaching firings this past week. I will say, I just want to thank the Philadelphia Eagles for allowing me to stand in solidarity with my fellow podcast buddies. They don't have a team to talk about this weekend. So you know what? I've decided I'm not going to talk about the Eagles this weekend. Thank you for being the number 1 seed. But anyways, with that, we'll head to Raider Jim first. Take it away.
Once again, another abysmal performance in season by the Las Vegas Raiders. Add to that all the upheaval in the last couple weeks with the quarterback position and Derek Carr. They made this big move in the offseason to bring Adams out here from Green Bay and get the ball rolling, and man, it's going to be great guns. And thank goodness Devontae Adams grew up a Raiders fan. Or talk about getting shortchanged to make a career move like that, come all the way out here, and only to have one of your best buddies and your former teammate get sold out from under you, if you will. And so really just, again, more disappointment overall. How they can continue to not improve defensively. I've said it on the podcast before, and I'll say it again. It goes back to what one of the old high school coaches used to yell at us, and that is, you got to practice to be that stupid. And so that's kind of where it lays with me as far as the organization, the the Las Vegas Raiders go. Still a member of the Raider Nation, always will be, but wow, it's a real disappointment.
Yeah, and
season in general, though, I got to say, my jury is still out on if this extra long season, just now getting into the playoffs, etc., how much of that has been a contributing factor indirectly more than anything, but indirectly with some of the injuries we've seen. You don't know. It's hard to say, hard to tell, but it just seems like there were some pretty bad ones this year, and because the shortened preseason, is it because of the extra weeks? I really don't know, but it just seems to have had a little bit of an impact.
Yeah, I saw something out there the other day and someone kind of brought this up, maybe doing um extending the size of active rosters to just maybe add a little extra depth. I don't think us, seeing 60 players on the active roster as opposed to 52. Or conversely, maybe we see what we see in the NBA with the quote unquote load management. I don't know if we'll get there because it's such a short season, at least in terms of games played. I don't know if you can kind of pick and choose that, but who knows? But yeah, the injuries have definitely been at the forefront for a lot of people at the moment.
I mean, if you increase the size of the roster, then you're also increasing the size of your payroll dramatically
Yeah.
because you're not going to pay those other guys at practice squad prices.
Yeah.
And then what is that? How does that get passed along? It gets passed along to the guy that wants to take his kid to a game, or just, one of us who wants to go to a game and figures out if we can take out a small personal loan somewhere to do such.
Feel like you got to take out a small personal loan just to get NFL Sunday ticket. But
Yep.
anyways, Coach, your thoughts? Obviously, a tough season for the Saints, a little bit of a transition after the Sean Payton era. But your thoughts overall?
Yeah, just you hit it like you said, transition from the Sean Payton / Drew Brees era.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that they came in almost simultaneous or simultaneously, didn't go out simultaneously, but huge roles and responsibilities to fill for a guy like Dennis Allen. And as we've seen the last couple of years, this three-headed quarterback with Taysom Hill, with Jameis Winston, and then this last season with Andy Dalton. But yeah, tough season to say the least. And I could always count on you to let me know what a tough season it is for my team. But what a great draft pick you guys will end up with this coming April. So yeah, I don't mind the troll shots because it doesn't happen often, or in our case, in most recent years. But we'll see what we could do in the off season to get back on track. And going back to the whole extension of the season, yeah, I think we're kind of seeing the residual effects with certain key names not being available for roster spots. Certain key names not being available for roster spots, and teams not being 100% going into the playoffs. And then I think we're always going to have that coaching carousel, right? And it started last Monday, and we'll see where it goes moving forward. And there's, like I was saying to you guys in previous weeks, Sean Payton's name's out there. And we're starting to see a lot of that surface with certain teams like the Broncos and whatnot, and the Cardinals. So maybe even Houston. So we'll see what transpires for him and what transpires for my Saints moving forward. And fair warning, Mr. First, I hate the bye week. Yeah, so I'll be rooting for y'all, just because our connection or our relationship, but I fear that bye week for not just your team, but every previous team moving in the past and moving forward. So go Eagles, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and I agree. Look, the bye week has notoriously been kind of, obviously, I don't know if you can calculate it. Oh, this was this game, the bye week came into effect, but that one, things like that. But I definitely agree with you there. The one thing I will say is the Eagles, for the first 13, 14 weeks of the season, were very healthy. And the last 4, 5, 6 weeks has been the opposite. So you're right. That quote unquote, maybe rust or whatever, but I'm going to look at on the bright side and look at guys like Lane Johnson, CJ Gardner-Johnson, guys like that get an extra week to just get themselves ready for hopefully this 3 game stretch, and hopefully getting a chance to play for a Super Bowl. But the bye, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. it is what it is. But at the end of the day, it's a problem for next week. At the moment, it'll be a nice weekend for me to just kind of enjoy what should be some really good football. And my thoughts on really, I think the coaching situation was the big thing for me, is the Houston Texans situation, a second straight year of a one and done coach. And it'd be one thing if we're talking about someone who has a Brady or just has a talent pool that, like, for example, the Eagles or the Niners or something like that. But we're talking about a team that overall is below average. And then you look at the quarterback position, which is an absolute must. You have to be at the very least adequate at the quarterback position, or you have no chance to win in this league consistently. It's just how it is. And Davis Mills, while he's maybe been a bit of a surprise and maybe better than a lot of people expected, he's by no means a situational guy that you can look at and rely on. And it's now 2 straight coaches that have been given the axe after this. Obviously, Lovie Smith, look, he's going out there to win the game. They go for 2, the Texans do. They end up winning the game and giving up the first overall draft pick, essentially. So Bryce Young still could possibly fall to them. Obviously there's a lot of talk about Chicago trading that pick, but that's for another podcast. But the fact of the matter is, Lovie Smith, I don't think got a fair chance. It's very unfortunate for him. He deserves so much better. And as far as Cliff Kingsbury goes, that's kind of the opposite. It's kind of a situation of, we expected this, especially the rumors of Kyler and Cliff not seeing eye to eye. And they invested in Kyler. So the coaching situation is obviously interesting, but I will say one thing. Overall, I think Dan Campbell really deserves a lot of credit. That guy he's an absolute motivator and someone it's really hard to dislike, to go out and essentially say, screw it, I'm gonna ruin the Packers season. I respect that. And they went out and did the job. And a lot of people were doubting them, but diving into this week, of course, the wild card weekend will start chronologically. We'll start Saturday. We got the Seattle Seahawks at the San Francisco 49ers. The Seahawks are plus 375. The Niners are minus 500 on the money line side of things. San Francisco is 9.5-point favorites, and the over-under sits at 42.5. Raider Jim, we'll start with you. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, going to be a great game, and not to jump ahead, but looking at all 6 games, this is the only one where rain, the elements are really going to be a factor. Game time, it should be in the mid 50s to the low 50s, 70% chance of rain. And what's really going to matter is how much rain they're getting when they have that field uncovered prior to kickoff. And that's going to make that's going to make an impact on, I think, the overall performance of the game. Seattle's been playing good. You want to see old Geno keep doing his thing out there. But wow, you've got the old seasoned veteran against the young kid who they brought in off the bench, and they're just both playing out of their minds right now. San Francisco is just the better team, and I think defensively is, again, as I've said, because I read it somewhere, as when Garoppolo went down, Purdy's going to go as far as the defense will carry him. And I think they're going to have plenty of support on the defensive side of the ball. 9.5 points on the spread is a bit too much for me given the weather. So, and it's going to be good defense on both sides. So San Francisco gets the win, but I think Seattle covers at the 9.5. Take a half point more if you want to go all the way to 10. And I think I would go definitely a half a point on the under and go under 43.
Yeah, I agree on both of those, actually, even down to the half point, at least on the spread side of things. I really like Seattle plus 10. I think San Francisco isn't necessarily a team that's built to beat too many teams by double digits. And not to say that they can't, but they're not a team that's going to go out. Their defense is going to suffocate you. They kind of remind me of like a boa constrictor. they're not venomous. They're not going to, hurt you like this or that. They're just going to squeeze you and they're just going to lay on top of you. And by the fourth quarter, you're going to be sucking air and it's going to be 21-10 and you go, oh crap. And I know I just kind of gave myself saying they lose by 11, but in terms of, you just kind of look up and somehow, some way it's the fourth quarter, 5 minutes left and you're down by 2 scores and you go, darn, we don't really know how this happened, but it happened. And I think we do see that. But at the one thing is, when you see these divisional matchups, it's the third time. This is the third time these teams have seen each other. Obviously, you go back 5, 6, 7 years ago, this was essentially the NFC title game, or at least the two best teams in the NFC were these two powers. Not so much anymore, at least on Seattle's side of things. I've really kind of seen them kind of regress over the last few weeks. I don't know if maybe they just overperformed early on. And maybe this is a little bit more of a team where we expected them to be, but they're probably fortunate to be in the playoffs. Let's be honest. There were maybe some questionable calls in that Rams game that were able to get them into field goal position, but it is what it is. I do like the under 42.5, the rain, the defenses, the coaches, even though I know Kyle Shanahan's kind of an offensive wizard. And then the fact that Brock Purdy, I know he's had a really good start to things, but the nerves have to be inevitable, right? He's going in, Mr. Irrelevant, even though I hate that term, into Wildcard Weekend. You don't see that very often. You hardly ever see that for anyone to be starting, let alone at quarterback. But we'll see how that goes. I think nerves are a given there. So give me the under 42.5. Coach, what are your thoughts?
I couldn't touch on it any more closely than what the both of you have already. I mean, we got a weather report and how that's probably going to be the most determining factor in regards to keeping this a low-scoring game. You touched on probably Seattle peaking earlier than later in the season, where that could probably be the determining factor. I really do like the Niners to win this game, but like Raider Jim and you attested, I don't like them covering the spread. 9.5 is a big spread for opponents that have faced each other twice already this year, for opponents that are in the same conference, and for a matchup where we're seeing a rejuvenated career for Geno Smith, and as you mentioned, Brock Purdy, who is a rookie coming into playoffs. Now, the good thing about the Niners is they have this elite defense, and that could carry a team well deep into the playoffs. They did it. Baltimore was a perfect example of that, with Trent Dilfer, who had a solid pro career as a quarterback. But we saw it the last year with the Niners, and who's with Jimmy Garoppolo. So, I like the Niners to win, not necessarily to cover the spread. And because of the weather, and because I believe the Niners have a better running game than Seattle, it'll kill clock, it'll maintain leads, and it'll keep the score down. So, yeah, I really like the under more than the over.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I think for Brock Purdy, maybe a good matchup for them to have. You don't have to deal with, maybe the Cowboys, or even if somehow, it was the Buccaneers or something like that. No disrespect to the Seahawks or Geno Smith, but I think the defense for the Niners is going to have their way with this Rams team that, let's be honest, or excuse me, Seahawks team that struggled to beat the Rams last week in a game that they knew they had to have. Out of all the teams in the NFC that needed to win to get in, the Seahawks had by far the easiest matchup. And I mean, they got the job done, don't get me wrong, but we're stepping up from the Rams and Baker Mayfield to this defense that the Niners are going to throw at you. But we pivot to Saturday night. You have the Los Angeles Chargers at the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Chargers are minus 130 on the money line. Jacksonville plus 110. We, of course, see the Jaguars in the playoffs for the first time in a little while, since they were in the conference championship a few years back. The Chargers are 2.5-point favorites, and the over-under is 47.5. It's an AFC West game, so we're not starting anywhere else other than Raider Jim.
Yeah, the Chargers. The Chargers are there again, I think first time since 2018. Jacksonville, of course. And this is being billed as the new thing. It's going to be Herbert versus, my gosh, why did his name escape me all of a sudden? What's that?
Trevor
Lawrence. Yes. Yeah. Oh, these are the new up-and-comers. They're the kids to watch. There's the future of the NFL. So I guess now it's not Mahomes and Burrows. It is these two. They're the flavor of the month, which is not to disrespect them. I think that they're all they're definitely the future, these four guys, when you mention their names, and a couple other guys too. Earlier in the year, they took care of business against the Chargers. They're playing at home. The Chargers to go in there a 2.5-point favorite is kind of surprising. I really think my question about the Chargers is this. Everybody questioned, why did this guy play his starters, the coach for the Chargers? Why did he play his starters last week when he really didn't mean to? They were calling it a garbage game. Didn't matter. They were playing against a garbage team, etc. And, everybody knows more than the coach, especially on Monday, right? But the one thing I did see come out of that game is Bosa went in, Bosa limped off. And what is that going to do now? Because Jacksonville is going to get at Herbert. They're going to be able to get to him. And I think if they chase him around enough, they're going to create opportunities for the defensive backfield. And I think that if Bosa's even a little bit off, they're going to give Lawrence too much time. I like Jacksonville to cover in this one. I might even just go money line on this one. And it's going to be not bad weather out there. Both these teams like to score. So to see a 27-24 game, 51 points, I think we see the over in this one.
Yeah, I like that. Coach, what are your thoughts?
He's muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. So, a couple of things that I that I'm looking at is one, it's a home field 3 points for Jacksonville, right? The spread's what, 2?
Yep.
For the Chargers. So it's a 3-point advantage for Jacksonville being at home. Okay. Number 2, I'm giving this a number of 3 points again, because I think when you calculate what the Chargers coach has done, and he has this reputation for this 4th down and whatever I'm going, and he's playing those percentages. He's failed equally as he's succeeded in the regular season with that methodology. Well, now he's going against a guy. So this is where my +3 goes to Jacksonville again, because he's going up against a Super Bowl head coach in Dougie P, right? A guy that's been through the wars with your Eagles in the playoffs and in a Super Bowl against a guy like Belichick, of all people. And he's succeeded. And he's going against a head coach that has been questioned all year long with his decision making. He's going against the team that they're in the playoffs after so many years. They're missing maybe one of their top receivers in Mike Williams going into this game, and I don't understand why the spread's favorable for him. I do like Jacksonville in this matchup. I don't know the scoring outcome, though. It was 38-10 the first time. High scoring. It's, 52 this time? The spread or the over-under?
47.5.
The over-under is 47.5?
Yep.
Hey, yeah, the way that Jacksonville took care of Tennessee last week, putting up some number of scoring on defense. Let's go with the over on that. But I think it's going to be closer than the previous matchup. I think that kind of game's thrown out the door. I think Jacksonville gets it on kind of those intangibles of having an experienced head coach, being home. Weather's not going to be a factor for either team, so that kind of neutralizes it. And at this point, I can't count on a Chargers head coach to make that one decision that's going to be that the determining factor to get over the top on this. Just his level of inconsistency leads me to say that.
Yeah, I think coaching, I know like Raider Jim kind of said it's the billing of, the young guns, and that's just NBC trying to make sure that you're plopped down and tuned in on Saturday night. But I as much as it's being built as, Lawrence versus Herbert, blah, 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 blah. I think this is really going to come down to the coaching side of things, because I think that's the biggest mismatch. And obviously, look, I'll acknowledge my bias. Doug P he's the GOAT as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, it didn't end terribly well in Philadelphia, but he has obviously landed on his feet and he has turned things around. Excuse me, to the tune of what we saw last year from Urban Meyer to what we've seen now. And let's be honest, I don't think the NFL has a most improved player award. I know they have comeback player of the year, but I think that's more towards injury or things like that. But most improved player, I mean, I think Trevor Lawrence has to be at the top of that list. And if you really have, any thoughts about that, it's probably what to do with Doug Peterson. You look at Carson Wentz. He's probably one of the statistically worst quarterbacks in the league. This is a guy who would have won MVP with Doug Peterson. Nick Foles, a average quarterback his entire career. When he got with Doug Peterson, he obviously was able to, get on that ride and win a Super Bowl. So I think a lot of this is Doug Peterson. And the other side is Brandon Staley in terms of what are you thinking? Last week, Mike Williams and Bosa both go down. There's no positive to this. I mean, at the very least, you look at it and go, hey, even if we do lose this game and then we don't make the Super Bowl, that'll help our draft stock at the end of the day. And it's an opportunity to let these young guys play. I mean, the fact that I thought I was missing something, I had to go online to make sure I wasn't missing why Herbert was still in the game. Is there some crazy scenario where the Chargers could move up or down? And there wasn't. I believe they'll rue that decision. And I don't know if it will cost Brandon Staley his job, but I know there are plenty of Charger fans who would love to see, who coach be on the sidelines of the Chargers next year. And of course being Sean Payton. So I don't know if going for it on fourth downs and being at 50%, which is not where you want to be, is a fireable offense. But I think treating week 18 meaningless football as something that needs to be played for and losing two of your best players possibly for the playoffs, that may be a fireable offense, but we shall see going forward. In terms of this game, I like Jacksonville. I like them on the money line. I like them on the spread. It doesn't matter. I think Jacksonville's going to win this game. I think Doug Peterson is salivating at this opportunity to go up against a team like this. Herbert's going to get his. There's no doubt about that. I just don't think overall the Chargers are going to be able to hang with this resurgent Jacksonville team that has just gone on a tear. And it's a great story after what they went through last year, the Urban Meyer experiment that was, the old chemistry where you pour two things in and next thing you see is just smoke and someone walks out with, the face all blacked out from, getting blown up. That was the Urban Meyer experiment. But I do also like the over. I think we're going to see a lot of points being scored here. It's going to be a really fun game on a Saturday night. But I think Jacksonville comes out on top. Give me that money line. So moving on to our Sunday morning matchup. It'll be 10 a.m. here on the West Coast, 1 p.m. on the East. Do the math in between. You have the Miami Dolphins at the Buffalo Bills. The Dolphins are plus 560 on the money line. Bills minus 800. The Bills are 13.5-point favorites. And the over-under sits at 43.5. Raider Jim, get us started.
Yeah, what do you say? Game 1, we talked about Brock Purdy. Game 3, we're going to talk about Skylar Thompson. God love him. He's thrown for 500 yards this season. He's 1 win and 1 loss. He has maybe he has a backup behind him, but we're not sure because we don't know how well Teddy's really doing these days. You talk about a guy that's got his work cut out for him, and normally in a playoff situation, didn't like 9.5 points in that game one. I normally would not like 13.5 points in a playoff game, but I just don't see what Miami is going to do to slow down Buffalo. And the charging Buffalo team and the Buffalo defense, because what they're going to do is they're going to pressure this kid. He's going to have to hurry and take chances, and that's when you make mistakes. And you can't make a bunch of mistakes against the Buffalo Bills. Plus, they're still riding the high of 2 kickoff returns in one game last week. All that, the momentum, they've got it going right now going into this round one. I'm not putting them in the Super Bowl by any means right now. But for a game at home where the weather's going to be just fine for football, you can give me, I would say I will take Buffalo to cover the spread, and I would say it's going to go under 44.
Yeah, it's such a tough
spread.
one. It's so tough. You're not normally used to seeing spreads like this on Wildcard Weekend. And when you do, you kind of immediately jump onto the plus side of things. But like you said, Skylar Thompson, he's doing what he can. I don't think he envisioned this being the situation 6 weeks ago. He would have loved it, don't get me wrong, but I think even he knows maybe this isn't the best situation for the Dolphins to be in. And I know they're going to compete, and I know they're going to go out there. The only thing I'm worried about in this game is a backdoor cover. I don't think at any point in this game are we going to be worried about the Dolphins winning, or at least late in the game. It might be 7-7 at the end of the first quarter, something like that. But when it's time to kind of hit that crunch time, the last 5 minutes of the third quarter into the fourth quarter, I don't think there's going to be too many nerves going on. I think we're going to pretty well know who's won the game. But like I said, I'm just worried about that last, 2 minutes down 17 points. And Buffalo's just kind of getting ready to move on, figure out who they're playing next week. And Dolphins go down, score a touchdown, lose by 6 or lose by 10 or lose by 9 in a game that, once again, we never really were in doubt. So, hold a gun to my head. I'm going to take the plus side of things just because it seems crazy to go on the 13.5, but I would not be surprised to see Buffalo cover it. So give me Miami plus 13.5, but I do not expect the Bills to win, or excuse me, I do not expect the Dolphins to win this game by any stretch of the imagination. I do like the over in this one only because for the Dolphins to cover, I feel like the game needs to go over, and I'm just kind of going by default there, thinking how the game is going to go. That backdoor cover for the Dolphins may get the backdoor cover for the over as well. So a bunch of backdoors in that side of it. But Coach, what are your thoughts? Dolphins at Buffalo.
Yeah, tough one to call as far as 13 or 13.5 goes. I think I read a stat in the last 6 games, Buffalo hasn't won in double digits with a double-digit lead in their last 6 games. So, that makes it even tougher to say that 13 is a comfortable call, even with their Skylar Thompson behind the helm. And then just kind of the familiarity between these two teams. This is another one of those third time's a charm matchup. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to pick Miami to win it. But let me just be that outlier and say Miami will cover. And it'll be a lower scoring game than expected. Just putting that out there.
Gotcha. I think it's gonna be a good game for a third installment. I just don't know if it'll be terribly competitive. Also, I think the Bills kind of have that momentum of, hearing the news about DeMar Hamlin. We obviously saw the kickoff on the first play. I'll tell you what, boys, I'm man enough to admit I was watching that game, or I saw it on Red Zone first play. I got a little choked up. I ain't gonna lie. That was very powerful. to see the emotion, not only from Naheem Hines, but Josh Allen just kind of wide-eyed, almost like all of us going, are you bleeping kidding me right now? And then, of course, the people of Buffalo to have that and to kind of not exercise that demon, but to get it done against the hated Patriots. But just seemed really cool. But we'll see if that momentum kind of carries this team through, at least on the spread side of things, because I don't think this game result wise is a big question mark. I think it's just a matter of how many Buffalo wins by. But moving to our
sorry.
No, go for it.
To follow up on that kickoff return. Yeah, very emotional for me as well. Just to kind of bring a competitive spiritual side to it, like, or Quasimodo or yin yang or just some universal powers in it. You know, I was like feeling all that when I'm seeing this guy break through. But what if he didn't have 2 kickoff returns?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
you know, what's the score, right? And the percentage of scoring a one kickoff return, let alone 2, not very high. So then we question, well, what's wrong with the offense?
Mm-hmm.
Just to kind of go into this playoff matchup and that double-digit spread, kind of concerning. So that's why I kind of chose Miami.
Yeah.
So, anyways, but yeah, no, thanks for bringing that up and kind of bring up those thoughts in regards to those kickoffs. But
yeah,
it was very sentimental as well. Can attest to that.
And I think it was even better because we knew that DeMar was watching that game. I mean, I don't think even when we recorded on last Thursday, and we talked about the situation, for him to be watching that game. And obviously, I don't know if y'all heard, but the doctors did say that pretty much every alarm went off in the ICU on that kickoff return. Because obviously he was very happy watching that. But he's home now and it's just great news. But moving on to the afternoon game on Sunday, we have the New York Giants at the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are minus 165 on the money line side of things. Giants plus 140. Vikings minus 3 on the spread, and 48 is the over-under. This is an NFC East game, so I'll get this one started. The Giants obviously are a team that is... last week obviously did what the Chargers probably should have done, right? They pretty much packed it in. And they almost beat the Eagles. I don't know if the Eagles kind of decided to pack it in late, but it got a little dicey towards the end, and it was somewhat of a garbage time touchdown into an onside kick. But at the same time, I felt like maybe the Eagles should have performed much better than that. But I think that's a nice positive for what we've seen from the Giants, for that they're deep enough to do that. And the Vikings are a team that is kind of, I don't want to say backing in, but they remind me a lot of the Steelers from a few years ago, where they were the last undefeated team. They were like 12-4, 13-3, a really high seed, but nobody really believed in them. And they got their butts kicked in the first weekend by Cleveland. And it was just kind of like, whoa, what's going on? I kind of get that feeling from Minnesota. I don't know, Daniel Jones. I'm not fully ready to hitch my wagon to him just yet. The minus 3 is a little tough. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to buy a 0.5 point. I'm going to take Minnesota minus 2.5. I think they get the job done. But once again, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for me to really go all in on the Giants. I know Saquon Barkley's really had a good year, things like that. In terms of the over-under, I think we keep this under the 48. I know the Giants defense is one that I was impressed with last week, and I think they can, force some bad habits into Kirk Cousins early on, but we shall see. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is we saw what happened on, I think it was Christmas Eve, and if not but for the Christmas Angels flying overhead and a kicker who pulled one out with a 61-yard shot, which is no walk in the park to have to do that. Guess what? They don't win that game. The Vikings don't. And they can't let it be that close again this time, but I think it's going to be that close. I think the offensive line for the Giants is going to control it, keep them on the field. They're going to grind. quarterback just has to get the ball and not turn it over. And I think they're going to play a pretty flawless game on the offensive side. Defense will do enough to keep them in the game. I think the Giants definitely, I'll take the half point also, but on the other side, I'm going to take Giants plus 3.5. But I agree with you, it's going to go under. But this is going to be Minnesota has just been too inconsistent this year. You know, everybody, I felt that they were going to handle their division easily, but boy, they just stepped on their feet too many times during the season.
Yeah, I agree. It seems to be whenever they're in these big spots, kind of expect them to fail, and they fail even, bigger than you expected them to, like we saw a few weeks ago. But Coach, what are your thoughts, Minnesota and New York?
Listening to a lot of the prognosticators this morning, a lot of them are picking this one for the Giants. There's not a lot of believers in this Minnesota team, and I thought you both brought up very valid points in regards to their inconsistencies. The defense hasn't been what it had been in the years past. And then I don't think anyone's mentioned, the reputation of a Kirk Cousins in these type of games, that level of inaccuracy or the level of inconsistencies and in him. He's kind of been that scapegoat, or he's kind of been that target for criticism because he hasn't been able to produce in clutch games. Raider Jim, you brought up the strength of the Giants O-line. Let's not forget the Giants D-line. The Giants D-line is not anything Swiss cheese. So they've got a number of first-round picks that, goes to say they're probably very talented. They've done it with consistent health all season long. There hasn't been that major loss on the line to say there's a weakness in it. And then you got like the resurgence of a Saquon Barkley that, his first couple of years, you're wondering what he's going to be because of his health. And this might have been that year that he's like, okay, I'm intrigued. I'm interested. I'm going to grind a little bit more than I had in years past. And look what it's done. It's put them in the playoffs after so many seasons. And then we haven't talked about Brian Dable. Brian Dable was in this position as an OC the last number of years with the Bills in the playoffs. Well, now he's the head coach, and hey, the results have spoken for themselves from last year to this year with him at the helm. And it'll be an intriguing matchup to see these two former OCs in Kevin O'Connell and Brian Dable do their thing. And I think the Giants are going to take it. And I think it goes over. But I think the Giants are going to steal it. And I might just be going with the consensus. But from what I've read and from what I've heard, they've all convinced me not to choose otherwise. So, I like the Giants in this matchup.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting one. And obviously the Giants, they're returning to the playoffs, and for Minnesota, I think they really have to have a really good weekend to get a lot of people back on board. And I don't know if they can do that against a team that is going to be pretty hungry in the New York Giants. Possibly nerves there with Daniel Jones as well in his first playoff start, but I don't think it'll be that big of a deal in that situation. Finally on Sunday, our second to last game, we'll be talking about the Sunday night matchup, another divisional matchup. It is the Baltimore Ravens plus 330 at the Cincinnati Bengals minus 450. The Bengals are -8 on the spread, and 40.5 is the over under. Let's start with you, Raider Jim. Ravens at Bengals.
Yeah, another one of those games where normally I would look at -8. Seems to be too much for two teams of this caliber. if the Ravens were of the caliber that they were earlier in the season, maybe even in midseason. But you know what? There's that question mark out there, Lamar Jackson. And now what's coming out, and they're always, sensationalism sells press. So, he's not really hurt. This is a contract thing, so they want you to believe that maybe Jackson is saying, gee, coach, I don't know, my leg's feeling kind of bad right now. I don't think I can go out there. But I'll tell you what, PCL or not, whatever part of your knee is, it hurts, folks. If you've never had these injuries, they can slow you down. And if he can't be 100%, then you don't want him out there because, one, it doesn't help the team, and two, it doesn't do anything for his career, to add to the longevity of his career. But because of that, if he is not the starting quarterback, then Cincinnati is in prime position to cover the 8 points. But I can see it getting close. So I think I will take Baltimore to cover at 8. But I also think this can probably go over the 40.5. I'll take a half point on that over 40, but I think Baltimore will cover. It's going to be a little closer than everybody thinks, but they're not going to be able to get past Cincinnati.
Yeah, I agree. I think Cincinnati wins this game, and thank goodness this game didn't come down to a coin flip. I'm not, or at least in terms of who hosted the game. And I'm not sitting here because the NFL was put in a very tough spot. I understand that it's week 17 when all that went down, and you can't really, expect to start that game up. So they were put in a really tough spot. At the end of the day, I'm just glad it didn't come down to a coin flip. So now Cincinnati hosts this game kind of fair and square while winning their division. On the Lamar Jackson side of things, I'll say this right now. I think there are a lot of people who have always kind of been surprised that the Baltimore Ravens have not locked Lamar Jackson up. And I'll tell you this right now, I would not be surprised if 10, 15, 20 years from now, Lamar Jackson comes out and goes, yeah, you know what? If they would have signed me to an 8-year contract before that game, I probably would have played the final 2 games. But I don't blame this guy for not wanting to run out there when he's so much contract uncertainty. He has a franchise that is literally pushing him out there and running him more than pretty much any other quarterback while not paying him. So yeah, if he's not 100%, I am all on the team Lamar Jackson. You want him to fight tooth and nail for you, pay him, period, at the end of the day. You could talk about toughness all you want. That's fine. There are plenty of people who would just do it just for the hell of it. That's fine too. But I think there need to be a lot of people who understand what's best for Lamar Jackson in his career might not always be what's best for the Baltimore Ravens at this moment. So with that, getting that out of the way, probably not going to see him this weekend, but I do think Tyler Huntley is serviceable. I think Cincinnati is a team that is, for better or worse, I think they're playing with a chip on their shoulder. And it's not because of anything. It's just because of that whole coin flip. It's because they feel like if everything would have gone their way, they should have been the 2 seed. There are just a lot of, kind of frustrations in Cincinnati. And I think they do take it out on Baltimore this weekend. And I think the Bengals do cover the 8. I might just cover myself and bet the extra half point or buy the extra half point to get to 7.5 just in case. But I do like the under as well. I think this is going to be an AFC North matchup, kind of that ground and pound. It might not be crazy inclement weather, but it's probably not going to be terribly warm. There's going to be a little adjusting out there in Cincinnati. So I think it'll be kind of a slower paced game on the ground. I do like Cincinnati to cover, but I do like the under. Coach, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think going into this playoffs, this is what Burrow's all about. You guys spoke enough on Lamar Jackson. Interesting to see this past week, they locked up Roquan Smith to a major 5-year deal, right? And then there's like no talk on the quarterback side.
I mean, that's just crazy.
It really is to me, especially going into was it before last week's game just going into a playoff when there was some uncertainty whether they were going to make it or not.
Yeah.
So it's like, what's the deal going forward? But no, you know what, this is where I think as I've kept very, very little track of Cincinnati, more than I probably would have liked. This is where, I think they just kind of want to go into that let's just get into the tournament all season long. I kind of felt like that all season, watching them or reading about them or seeing their highlights. Let's just wait till we get into the tournament, the playoff tournament, and then we'll really get going and do our thing. And that kind of attitude kind of relays just kind of that swag that Joe Burrow just kind of exudes. I think that guy is outstanding. I think that guy's a leader in the sense of the word, and I think they have a lot to prove. Not being able to complete a game, under those horrific circumstances, and I think they have a lot more to prove than not prove, because that could have well been a statement game, and positions could have been different in what the seedings are in the playoffs. And not to sound disheartened and whatnot, but you could probably sense in that locker room with a chip. Those guys are probably playing with a chip and are gonna take it out on these Ravens, I think. So I really do like Cincinnati here. The bad thing is we don't know if Lamar Jackson's gonna play. We're doing this on a Thursday. I haven't heard anything about ruling him out since. And there's that possibility that he might be out there. So I really, I'm going to go with Cincinnati to cover. And I think they're going to put up points. I mean, geez, I kind of want to see a guy like T. Higgins shake off some demons because of what happened a couple of weeks ago, and get going and get ready for that next round. So yeah, I really like Cincinnati in this game.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting matchup to see, even if Lamar will get out there. But once again, if Lamar's not out there and it comes out that, oh, maybe he could have gone, blah, 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 I won't blame him one bit, because once again, if you want the prize, pay for it, especially when you're handing out money to linebackers. Don't get me wrong, Roquan Smith, very good linebacker. But you're winning Super Bowls with franchise quarterbacks, not franchise linebackers. With all due respect, maybe it was a bad thing this team won a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco, because now they think, hey, it doesn't matter who's. I mean, actually, let's go all the way back to Trent Dilfer. Now that I think about it, maybe that was the start of it. They feel like they can do it no matter what. They don't care who's the quarterback. So we shall see, but I do think it will be the Bengals weekend. It'll be a question about whether or not it'll be a cover there. So
yeah, and I just pulled up an article that ran 56 minutes ago, and it says Lamar Jackson's comment is, "I wish I could be out there with my guys more than anything, but I can't give 100% of myself to my guys and fans. I'm still hopeful we have a chance."
Boom, there it is, and I have no problem with that. I have no problem with that. Once again, that's a very subtle pay me bleep. That's and once again, you could sit here and say they make too much money, blah, blah, blah. And that may be the case. But at the end of the day, if they do make a lot of money, Lamar Jackson should make towards the top of that. And it's a perfect segue, because we are going to talk about the final game of Wildcard Weekend. It will be the Monday night affair. The Dallas Cowboys at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The money line is Dallas minus 150, Tampa Bay plus 120. And the spread sits at Dallas minus 2.5, and the over-under sits at 45.5. It's an NFC East matchup, so I'll get this one started. And look, let me just say, I'm an Eagles fan, obviously. I try very hard to be fair to the Cowboys, because I know I'm biased. Very few things in the sporting world that I despise more than that dumb star on the side of the helmet. looks like a, a sixth grader designed that for its science fair logo contest. That's what that looks like. America's team, blah blah blah, bunch of BS. So I try very hard not to just really talk negatively about the Cowboys. Well, you know what, I'm throwing that out the window because this team is fraudulent. I'm just going to say that right now. At least this offense is fraudulent. I'm telling this right now. Dak Prescott, this guy got paid a lot of money. If Dak Prescott did not play in Dallas, do you know who Dak Prescott would be on a career comp level in my mind? Kyle Orton. And I don't think anybody can prove me wrong on that. This is a guy who has a big arm, will have really good games statistically where you go, whoa, he threw for 450 yards, blah, blah, blah. The next week, he goes 14 for 47 or 14 for 37 and is tied for the league in interceptions while missing 5 games. And this is a guy who's a quote unquote franchise quarterback. And this is an offense that's just been dismal, essentially can't figure out how to run the football. Mike McCarthy probably going to get fired. I cannot believe this. I already have a money line pick in for Tampa Bay. I don't understand what Vegas is looking at here. I know Tampa Bay has struggled this year, but it's Brady versus the Cowboys in the playoffs. This is the most, you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. The Cowboys always choke and Brady always overperforms with his teams. Give me Tampa money line. In terms of the over under, I like the over here. I think we are going to see some points being scored, but at the end of the day, Brady and his boys get the job done. And I think Dak, more questions begin to emerge because I do believe this guy is a fraud. I don't think he's an average quarterback, and that's fine, but he's not this franchise defining guy that Dallas believes he is. I kind of look at him like Derek Jeter. Okay. Derek Jeter, really good baseball player, but if he played in Kansas City, probably wouldn't still be talking about him. But since he played in New York, everyone loves him. Same thing with Dak Prescott because he got drafted and he's been a career. Same with Romo in Dallas, such a big market. I'm not buying it. But anyways, Raider Jim, what are your thoughts?
I feel like I just listened to Sonny Corleone going off and I'm Tom Hagen and I should be staring at you saying, Sonny, you're taking it personal. But I won't say that. But you pretty much hit it all on the head. I'm looking at it the same way. It's like Dallas is good, but they're not great by any means. They're a little dinged up too right now. And I don't know where he actually falls in the lineup. One of their guys getting arrested for was in a car accident. And they finally said, we're not going to go bring him in cuffs. We just want him to turn himself in. But when you have that kind of crap going on in the locker room, it does affect things one way or another. It just does. And Tom Brady's Tom Brady, and like you said, when it's playoff time, he just goes into another zone. He is able to make things happen. He does not. He does make mistakes. He could make a mistake or two. He's not going to make the mistakes on Monday night. That's for sure. Biggest stage, Monday Night Football, playoff Monday Night Football at home. Yeah, I'll take Tampa Bay to cover on this one. Actually, I'm with you. I'll take the money line on this one, and I like the over. I'll take a half point though and make it 45.
Yeah, and in my ferocity, I did forget one key thing. Look, I am a fan of Dak Prescott as a human being. I think he is somebody that came out.
Yeah. That's enough.
No, I gotta bring it back. I gotta
Sonny.
get my extra piece in there. But I am a fan of him as a human being. He is a fantastic human being. I just think, the professional side of things. Just want to make sure, I'm not looked at as too evil in this situation. But Coach, what are your thoughts?
I can't say any more. I think you both touched on everything in regards to the game, but I'm going to touch on some outside of the game. And that's the pressure a guy like Mike McCarthy has, especially with the affinity that Jerry Jones has for Sean Payton. Can you imagine when Tampa Bay does lay the smackdown on these guys and this guy's out? Like, can you imagine having a game plan thinking that's in the back of your head? Like, this guy's out there. These teams are going to be giving up draft picks for him. And knowing that the owner that I work for just loves this guy in the wings. But yeah, I'm gonna agree with the both Tampa here and Brady. Brady just playoff Brady is just another animal. So
Yeah.
they could limp into the playoffs, but as long as Brady is there, I mean, didn't they limp into the playoffs 2 years ago?
Yeah.
And then what? Right? They didn't almost win that game against Washington and Taylor Heineke, right? And then they went off. So
when we didn't know who Taylor Heineke was either. Taylor
yeah.
Heineke has turned himself into a pretty, at least serviceable quarterback. And I believe he was one of the guys that literally, I think he was taking a college final when his agent called him and said, stop what you're doing, fly to Washington. You're starting a playoff game against Tom Brady. And I agree with you because I remember that season, the Tampa Bay, I believe, I could be wrong, but it was very close to them being 8-0 against non-playoff teams and or maybe like 9-0 against non-playoff teams and like 0-7 or something like that. They played really well against bad playoff teams and really good against those other sides. So it was a very big surprise to see that. But when you talk about Sean Payton and the Cowboys, I'll say this right now. The feeling is mutual. It's almost kind of a situation where, Mike McCarthy in Dallas, it's kind of a troubled marriage. It's on the rocks. And, Jerry Jones' high school girlfriend just got divorced and moved back to town. Mike McCarthy's looking over his shoulder a little bit more, like you said, and that extra pressure, I think that could definitely come in. All signs point to Tampa. I'm going to go that way. And you know what? If Dallas comes out and pulls it out, you tip your hat and, you go, but you got to stick to kind of your guns when it comes to, sports betting, at least in my eyes. So, but with that is all we have for this edition of the NFL Weekly. Let's get some final thoughts. Raider Jim, we'll start with you.
Yeah, real easy for me on this one. I could not let this podcast come to an end without giving a great deal of respect to Charles White, one of the greatest Trojan running backs of all time. I mean, who isn't? They've had so many go through, but he was a different kind of a guy. Coach Robinson said probably one of the toughest players he ever coached. And he had the opportunity to coach him not only at USC, but also at when he was with the Rams. 6,245 yards for his collegiate career. Heisman year, 1979, Heisman Trophy winner, 2,050 yards, 19 touchdowns. Again, as I said about the young basketball player we talked about yesterday, Charles White was a grown-ass man when he played for the Trojans, and he represented the schools commendably. And even in his pro career, he went on to be a Cleveland Brown. He did end up with the Rams. He actually took over for Eric Dickerson when they traded Dickerson to the Colts, and he racked up 1,300 yards that season. He was great. Ended up on the coaching staff for the Trojans for a bit, and then also took an administrative position. What people didn't know, and it was a hard thing, they said he became very hard to be around. Moody, if you will. That's too weak of a word, but they said, his mood would just change, and he was a bit contentious at times because nobody understood, nobody knew. I don't think he even knew at the time that he had the onset of the brain tumor that has taken his life. So everybody had nothing but great things to say about him. What a fantastic human being. What a fantastic U.S. Trojan. God bless Charles White and the White family.
Amen. Couldn't have said it any better myself. Coach?
Just along the sentiments of Raider Jim, I think, let's pay tribute. But looking forward to a good weekend of playoff football, and get ready for moving forward, next round.
Yeah, it's working our way towards February, of course, the Super Bowl, see how that ends up. The one thing I do want to talk about and the one thing I do want to touch on, we've paid, and rightfully so, paid a lot of attention to Damar Hamlin. I also want to, share some awareness towards former NFL running back Peyton Hillis, who luckily today or yesterday, I saw he was taken off the ventilator My goodness, he almost passed away. He almost drowned trying to save his kids who were sucked away while they were swimming in a riptide. And once again, I'm not a parent, I'm not anything like that, but the paternal instinct to go and essentially say, nope, you're living and I'm doing whatever it absolutely takes to make sure that you live. Essentially saying, putting his life on the line. That's very commendable. I know there's kind of a lot of, he's kind of a bit of the butt of a lot of jokes. He was kind of the 1-year wonder, the Madden curse, prototype, blah, blah, blah. But this is a man, you want to talk about a grown ass man. This is a man who put his life on the line for his children. And luckily, he is hopefully going to pull through. Like I said, he's off the ventilator. Personally, I'll even admit I haven't followed it as closely as, the DeMar Hamlin situation, but that the Peyton Hillis situation, hats off to him. Hopefully he makes a swift and quick recovery, and his children know that he will put his life on the line for them. I think that's something that needs to be commended. So thoughts and prayers going out to that family as well. But with that is all we have for you this weekend, or this week on the NFL Weekly, presented by the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It is time for y'all to go wash your hands and stop hating, everybody. We'll talk to you all very soon. Have a great night. Take care.